I remember the weight of that morning, the way the air felt heavy even before we stepped inside. I walked into the crowded corporate lobby with Aunty Grace Thompson beside me, my mother's older sister, the woman who'd carried my entire childhood on her back. She looked calm on the surface, but I could feel the nervous tremor in her fingers as she adjusted the strap of her old, faded handbag. This interview was a long shot, and she knew it. I knew it. Still, she walked in with quiet hope. The recruiters noticed her immediately, noticed the secondhand blazer, the worn shoes, the posture of a woman who'd lived life instead of decorating it. I caught their smirks, the quick side glances they exchanged, before shifting their attention back to the polished young candidates, dripping confidence and privilege. Grace kept her eyes down, pretending not to see. Then the receptionist, tall, sharp, too proud for her own skin, leaned toward her coworker, not even bothering to lower her voice. Why would someone her age even try? Madison Clark, her nameplate read. The syllables burned into me. I saw Grace flinch, almost imperceptible. She smoothed her sleeves, lifted her chin a little higher, as if dignity alone could shield her from whispers that cut sharper than knives. During check-in, the staff switched instantly into that slow, exaggerated tone people use when they assume someone can't understand simple English. Ma'am, do you know where the elevator is? I could feel heat crawl up my spine. Grace forced a gentle smile, nodding, thanking them quietly. A group of young executives walked past us then, bright badges, louder egos. Tyler Briggs was among them, the hiring manager. He snatched her resume from the stack like he was touching something fragile, glanced at it for half a second, and burst into laughter with his crew. "This looks like paper from a different century," he said, waving it around, loud enough for anyone to hear. Grace didn't look up. I did, and the way they stared back, like we were intruders, lit something bitter in my chest. "Senta ka." When Grace's fingers trembled and her folder slipped from her hands, pages fluttering like wounded birds across the floor, no one moved. Not one person bent down. I watched two interns step over the papers as if they were trash. I dropped to my knees, gathering the sheets, trying not to let my anger bleed through my voice. Grace knelt beside me, whispering, "It's okay, sweetheart. I'm used to this." That sentence broke me more than anything they'd done. I stood by the glass wall as she entered the interview room. I watched Tyler lean back in his chair, smirk etched so deeply into his face it looked permanent. Every time Grace answered a question, he exchanged looks with the other two panelists. Eye rolls, suppressed laughter, tapping pens in boredom. Halfway through, Tyler openly pulled out his phone, typing something before showing the screen to the panel. They laughed. They actually laughed while she was speaking. When she finally stepped out, Grace looked pale, eyes glossy, her smile brittle. She held her folder against her chest like a shield she didn't believe in anymore. Walking through the lobby was worse. The panelists followed behind us, tossing jokes into the air like confetti. "People who should just retire already," one said. Another snorted, "What a waste of an interview slot." As we pushed the glass doors open, someone behind us muttered, "Better luck, well, never." Grace forced a smile, but her breath hitched, just once, barely a crack, but enough for me to hear it, enough for it to become a wound inside me. By the time we reached the parking lot, the burning in my chest had grown into something I couldn't contain. A promise formed in me, silent, cold, unbreakable. This would not be the end of her story. Not like this. That night, I lay awake replaying everything, every laugh, every insult, every moment Grace held herself together so I wouldn't see her break. But I saw it, I heard it, and it changed something in me. This wasn't just an unfair interview. It was a public declaration that her experience, her sacrifice, her entire life meant nothing to them. And somewhere in that darkness, something inside me snapped. They would regret underestimating her. They would regret every smug glance, every whispered joke, every cruel dismissal. I didn't know what I was planning yet, but I knew one thing. It had already begun. I used to think I understood strength until the day Grace became my entire definition of it. After my parents died in that crash when I was 13, she stepped into the chaos of my life without hesitation. No savings, no plan, no partner, just a quiet promise. You're not alone. Not while I'm here. From that day on, she carried both our lives on her back, earshot. She worked 3 jobs just to keep us afloat. Janitorial shifts before dawn, serving tables at the diner through the lunch rush, night shift caretaker work that stole her sleep but paid just enough to keep the lights on. I'd wake up at midnight and find her shoes by the door, wet from rain, worn from use, still lined up neatly like she refused to show how tired she was. And yet, even exhausted, she had a brilliance people never looked long enough to see. Grace could balance a neighborhood's finances better than any accountant. She settled disputes between families with a diplomacy that would shame half the corporate world. But she always shrugged off her gifts, calling herself just an ordinary woman, like the world had convinced her long ago that she wasn't made for anything bigger. I remember nights when she'd fall asleep at the kitchen table, calculator still in hand, spreadsheets spread out beside cold tea. She'd whisper apologies into the air, thinking I couldn't hear. I'm sorry I can't give you more. I'm trying. So, she was giving me everything. Albeit, when I turned 18, something changed in her. For the first time, she let herself imagine a life beyond survival. She enrolled in online courses, business management, operations, leadership. She studied until her eyes were red, until the clock hit sunrise, until her small room glowed with the light of her determination. Every time she passed a course, she printed the certificate like it was a photograph of her becoming someone new. She taped them to her bedroom wall, each one a tiny victory she refused to celebrate out loud. So, when she applied for that job, it wasn't just a job. It was supposed to be the first real career step of her life. The moment she finally claimed the opportunities she'd sacrificed decades for. I remember sitting beside her as she filled out the application. She hesitated at the education section, fingers frozen, shoulders tight. They want people like you, she murmured, not people like me. She said it softly, like a fact carved into her bones. Behind her humility lived an old wound, one built from years of being overlooked, dismissed, underestimated, a quiet trauma that taught her to shrink before anyone asked her to. But the way she looked after that interview, I had never seen her so small, defeated, ashamed, like all those old wounds had been ripped open at once. She didn't cry, not Grace, but the silence on the drive home was so heavy it felt like it was suffocating both of us. That night, I passed by her door and heard her whisper to herself, almost broken, maybe I was foolish to try. That sentence hit me like a blade straight to the chest. It tore something inside me, something that had been quiet for years but suddenly roared awake. Anger, grief, protectiveness, a fury I'd never felt so deeply. I spent my entire life watching her lift me, lift others, hold entire worlds together while asking for nothing, and now it was my turn, my responsibility, my promise. She didn't know the truth, that while she struggled alone, I had built a far more successful career than she realized. Corporate analytics, strategy, high-level planning, I'd climbed quietly, deliberately, waiting for the right moment to step into the light. And that moment was coming. A phone call I'd been expecting for months was about to land in my hands. A promotion, a position with power, real power, the kind that could move walls, expose corruption, rewrite futures. A power shift was coming for that company. They just didn't know that the woman they mocked was about to become the center of a story they'd never recover from. 2 weeks later, I was halfway through reheating last night's leftovers when my phone lit up with a number I didn't recognize. The voice on the other end introduced himself as Chairman Rowe from the board of directors of North River Dynamics, the same company that had humiliated Grace. His tone was crisp, almost ceremonial. "Your promotion paperwork has cleared. Congratulations. You're being appointed Vice President of Strategic Operations. You will answer only to the CEO." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The air felt heavy, electric, dangerous. My first assignment, restructure multiple departments, including the division that had torn Grace apart. I didn't tell her. I couldn't. The secret burned inside me like a slow, controlled flame, excitement twisted with vengeance. I buried myself in files, spreadsheets, archived reports. Patterns emerged like rot under polished wood. Older applicants rejected, younger ones fast-tracked, resumes misplaced, experience brushed aside. And every time something smelled foul, the same name surfaced. Tyler Briggs. Demeaning, biased, manipulative. There he was, over and over. Complaints, warnings, HR notes that were conveniently resolved. I met with HR and the compliance officer, pushing past their rehearsed corporate smiles. "I want everything," I told them. "Every misconduct report, every complaint, every rule they bent, and every person they broke." Meanwhile, Grace kept grinding through her day jobs, early mornings, late nights, carrying on as if the world hadn't mocked her, as if that room hadn't tried to crush her spirit. She had no idea that the battlefield was shifting under her feet. No idea that I was about to dismantle the very place that belittled her. As part of my audit authority, I requested CCTV from the lobby and interview hall for the day she walked in, wearing her best hopes. The footage, it was worse than memory. The laughter that erupted when she turned her head. The smirks. The exaggerated gestures mimicking her walk. The eye rolls. Every piece of mockery hidden behind professional smiles. My hands trembled as I watched her again, sitting straight, voice steady, dignity intact, while they tried to reduce her to nothing. I compiled everything, the videos, the emails, the internal logs, the complaint history. Piece by piece, I built a dossier sharp enough to cut. Then I filed the request for a full department audit. Under my name, under my authority. Rumors spread through the building like a storm rolling in. "A new VP is coming." Someone high level. Nobody knows who. Restlessness gripped the halls. A mandatory town hall was scheduled, my official introduction to the company. I turned to Grace that evening, offering a small smile. "There's a career ceremony at my work. I think you should come." She agreed immediately, unaware of the truth, unaware of the weight of what she was walking toward. The day arrived. We stepped into headquarters together, just like before, but everything was different. There was no nervousness in my stride, no uncertainty, no fear. Grace walked beside me, still humble, still unaware of the storm she inspired. And me? I wasn't just her nephew following her into a hostile room. I was the one walking in to rewrite it. As we step into the lobby, the air shifts instantly. Madison, the receptionist, glances up, her expression flat and uninterested. She doesn't recognize me, at least not yet. Her eyes slide past me and land on Grace. The same dismissive look, the same quiet cruelty. "Why? Is she here to drop off paperwork for someone?" Madison asks, voice clipped, already motioning toward a side desk. I step forward before Grace can respond. "She's with me," I say, calm, cold, controlled. Madison's expression cracks when her gaze catches the VIP badge hanging from my neck. The color drains from her face just as HR comes rushing across the lobby. Suddenly, the space is filled with forced smiles, eager greetings, and frantic enthusiasm. "Mr. Miller, welcome! We've been expecting you." Grace looks at me, confused and overwhelmed. "Why are they all treating you like this?" she whispers. I take her hand, squeezing gently. "You'll see," I tell her, and I mean every word. Inside the town hall, Hundreds of employees fill the seats. Conversations dull as we enter. Eyes follow us. Whispers trail behind us. And in the front row, arms crossed, attention on his phone, face bored, stands Tyler Briggs. He has no idea. Not yet. The CEO walks onto the stage, his smile stiff with formality. Good morning, everyone. Today, we introduce a leader who will guide North River Dynamics into its next era. Please welcome our new Vice President of Strategic Operations, Mr. James Miller. Gasps ripple across the hall like a shockwave. Heads snap toward me. Papers rustle. Someone exhales sharply. But it's Tyler's face that I watch, his confidence collapsing, his skin draining to a sickly pale. Beside me, Grace raises a trembling hand to her mouth. James, why didn't you tell me? She murmurs, voice shaking. I turn to her, my chest tightening. Because today isn't about me, I say quietly. And it's the truth. I walk to the podium. The spotlight hits me, hot against my skin, but my voice doesn't waver. I want to begin with a story, I say. A story about a woman who raised me, who worked 3 jobs at times, who sacrificed every comfort so I could stand where I am today. A woman whose worth was never recognized by the people who judged her. The room goes still, dead still. Even the air feels tense. Tyler shifts, a nervous flicker breaking across his expression. He recognizes the story. He knows where this is heading. Then I drop the first blow. That woman sat in your interview room 2 weeks ago. A murmur spreads like wildfire. Heads turn, eyes widen. All of them look at Grace, humble, quiet, standing in the aisle with confusion and pain in her gaze. I let the tension hang before I strike with the turning point. And today, I pause, letting every heartbeat in the room stutter. She becomes your new boss. Silence. Heavy, stunned, breathless silence. Then the fear begins, small, restrained, but unmistakable. Yeah. Grace looks at me, stunned, tears forming at the edges of her eyes. I nod to her, voice firm as I announce her new title. What? Director of Operations Support. A role she is more than qualified for. A role she earned long before any of you knew her name. This isn't a favor. It isn't a gesture. It's justice, cold, precise, and overdue. And as I look out at the sea of shocked faces, I know one thing with absolute clarity. Wakak. The showdown is only beginning. The lights dim as I tap the remote, and the first slide flashes onto the giant screen behind me. The room leans forward, sensing the shift. Our internal audit uncovered extensive misconduct, I begin, my voice echoing through the hall. Discriminatory hiring practices, unethical behavior, mockery toward applicants. The next slide hits like a hammer. Oh, sir, CCTV footage. Unfiltered, undeniable. Grace walking in with a hopeful smile. The panel exchanging smirks. Tyler rolling his eyes. The whispered jokes. The laughter. Every insult. Every gesture. Every moment they tried to shrink her. Gasps scatter through the hall like sparks. Some employees cover their mouths. Others bow their heads in shame. Behind them, Tyler stumbles backward, grabbing the edge of a chair. This isn't real. This isn't happening, he mutters to himself, face ghost white. I turn toward him, letting the silence sharpen around my words. You didn't just disrespect an applicant, I say. You disrespected someone who deserved better than any of you. Legal and HR representatives step forward, crisp envelopes in hand. Tyler Briggs, the compliance officer, says, "You are hereby suspended pending formal investigation." 2 other panelists receive identical letters. 1. Tyler explodes. "You can't do this. She wasn't qualified. This is ridiculous." But no one listens, not anymore. I tilt my head, repeating his own words back to him. People like her shouldn't bother applying. Isn't that what you said? A ripple moves through the audience. Anger, disgust, awakening. Grace stands in the aisle beside the stage, quiet but unbreakable, shoulders lifted, eyes bright. The woman Tyler tried to belittle is nowhere to be seen. In her place stands someone who finally knows her worth. I face the crowd. Starting today, North River Dynamics will implement a new policy. All candidates over 40 will be prioritized for a specialized career development track, one designed by our new Director of Operations Support, Grace Miller. A beat of silence. Then applause, soft at first, then growing, then swelling into something thunderous. Grace steps onto the stage trembling, but when she speaks, her voice rings through the hall with clarity. "I'm not here because of revenge," she says. "I'm here because everyone deserves a chance to rise, even when others try to keep them down." The hall rises to its feet, an unexpected, overwhelming standing ovation. Grace's eyes shine, her breath shaking, but she stands firm. Security guides Tyler toward the exit. Red-faced, defeated, small, the restructuring rolls out immediately. Those who mocked her are placed under strict compliance review. Those who treated applicants with decency receive promotions and recognition. Grace joins me at the center of the stage. For the first time, she stands taller than the room that once tried to belittle her. The weight she carried for years, dismissal, doubt, humiliation, finally lifted. Justice doesn't scream. It doesn't need to. It is deliberate, undeniable, public. And today, she received all of it. Grace settles into her new office, a modest space with warm sunlight stretching across her desk, and within days, it feels like she's been running the department her entire life. She listens, observes, guides with a patience no manual could teach. Employees drift in and out seeking advice, and they walk away calmer, clearer, steadier. Her empathy becomes her authority. Her steadiness becomes her power. People who once mocked her now greet her with soft voices and careful respect. A few even come forward with genuine apologies, eyes lowered, guilt thick in their throats. She never gloats. She simply nods, offering the grace they never offered her. Meanwhile, Tyler tries to claw his way back, filing a wrongful termination claim. But the evidence dossier, every recording, every complaint, every documented insult, crushes his attempt before it can breathe. He disappears from the company's history as quickly as he tried to climb it. The board commends our division for uncovering systemic bias and implementing new standards. Meetings feel lighter, hallways feel safer. A shift has begun, and it's one she unknowingly sparked. Grace and I start driving to work together every morning, sharing coffee in the car, laughing at old memories, swapping stories about our day ahead. Sometimes she stares at the building as we park, whispering, "I still can't believe this office is mine." "It always should have been," I tell her, meaning every word. She decorates her wall with the certificates she once tucked away in a drawer, proof of nights she spent studying when no one believed she could rise. One afternoon, she calls me into her office. Her hands tremble as she stands from her chair. "James," she whispers, "thank you for seeing me when I couldn't see myself." I pull her into a hug, realizing the revenge was never about destruction. It was about rebuilding what the world had chipped away from her piece by piece, her confidence, her voice, her worth. Grace thrives. She creates training workshops, community hiring fairs, mentorship programs for older applicants beaten down by the same bias she once faced. Her name spreads across the company, not as a cautionary tale, but as a beacon of fairness, resilience, and quiet strength. For the first time in her life, she feels powerful, not because of the title on her door, but because the respect she carries is earned. And for the first time in mine, I feel like I've repaid even a fraction of what she gave us. We walk the halls together, no longer unnoticed, no longer underestimated. Two people who have finally rewritten their place in a world that once dismissed them. Her story becomes a quiet legend in the company, proof that underestimating the wrong woman can be a dangerous mistake. The humiliation she endured becomes the foundation of her triumph. And as I walk beside her, I know the journey isn't over, but the wound that once defined us both is finally, peacefully healing. I step onto my office balcony, the city skyline stretching behind me in a wash of gold and fading blue. The wind is soft, the glass towers glinting, and for a moment I just breathe, steady, full, certain, before facing the camera. This story, I begin, voice low, started with humiliation, with a lobby full of smirks, with years of hidden wounds Grace carried alone, with the way she held herself small because the world taught her to. I recount every beat of the journey, the mockery in that lobby, the quiet pain she didn't show me, the strength she'd carried since the day she raised me on her own. I talk about the ignorance behind their underestimation, how flimsy it looked when the truth finally hit them in the face. I glance out at the skyline. The same lobby where they laughed at her, I say softly, became the same building where she stood as their leader. The power shift still stuns me, the symmetry, the justice. I lean closer to the camera. Revenge doesn't always require cruelty. Sometimes justice is simply giving someone the place they always deserved. I tell viewers how Grace's dignity reshaped the entire company, how her resilience carried more weight than any strategy I could have designed, how humility, paired with undeniable competence, can shift an entire culture. I remind them that age doesn't define capability, background doesn't define ambition, appearances don't define worth. I describe the moment she hung her certificates on her office wall, every late-night class, every small victory, calling it the second beginning of her life. I straighten, letting the city lights sharpen behind me. If you've ever been underestimated, I say, if you've ever been dismissed or talked down to, don't stop. Keep learning, keep rising, keep pushing back against a world that tries to shrink you. So, I repeat Grace's new mantra, the one she lives by now. Your value doesn't decrease just because someone failed to see it. Then I look directly into the camera, letting the silence sit before the final words. If this story hit you in the heart, make sure you subscribe. There are more real stories, more battles, and more victories coming your way. The sun dips below the skyline, casting the city in amber. I give the closing line with a steady, certain voice. Remember, sometimes the quietest people carry the loudest triumphs.